Okay, let's see if we can answer a few questions. So what have we got? Owning land and buildings in France, what are the yearly taxes? Is buying cheap but only expensive? So yeah, there's like a lot of cheap properties to buy around here, especially in rural France. We're in what's called the empty diagonal. So yeah, you can get a pretty cheap house, but the one thing you want to look out for is what it's going to cost you to bring that house up to the standards you want it to be at. I'd say the most important thing is to check the roof. I've seen a lot of people who come over, they pick up a house for very little money, but then they spend an awful lot of money getting the roof replaced. It's probably the single biggest expense that you're going to have if it needs to be done. The other thing you need to look out for is what kind of sewer system you got in the house. Sometimes you're connected to a mains drain system, or sometimes you need to have a septic tank put in. If that's the case, that can run you up to about 10 grand. So the way the property taxes work is there's two types of taxes when it comes to property. There's tax, and forgive my pronunciation, taxe foncière and taxe habitation. So they cover sort of the property and then the services and any charges the department you live in has for you, like bins and stuff like that. It's not that expensive. It's a lot cheaper than somewhere like the UK. The mistake a lot of people buy, I think, is that they will see a property with loads of land that's cheap in comparison to what they'd be able to buy in their own country, and they go, that's great. So they buy an old farmhouse with a load of land, and then after a few months they realize it's actually quite hard to manage this land. So they end up, struggling there a lot. So I would say if you want lots of land, make sure you're going to use lots of land, because you will have to manage it very well and have the ability to do that. So, you got to start thinking about, do I need a tractor? Do I need a biggish lawnmower? Well, I've just changed the camera because the sun's kind of a bit all over the place. So it's quite hard to manage land if you don't have the ability to do it and the equipment to do it. So just be wary of that. Are people who live in France and only speak English well received where they live? Have many made the change without knowing the local language? I mean, my French wasn't great when I came here, but you do have to get stuck in, especially in rural France. You do need to speak French. There's no real way around it. It's not hard. I mean, I would say start with something like Duolingo. What helped me is I went into a bookshop and I bought a verb book. So you get all the verbs and what they mean. And that's quite useful because then you start getting an ear for it. One great piece of advice that I got was, if you have like a favorite movie or a favorite TV show that you've watched a few times, try watching it in French. It'll get your ear in a bit better because you'll kind of know what they're saying anyway, but you'll hear the French version of that. So that's a good little tip you could try if you're thinking about trying to pick up a bit of French. Why did you name your van Pascal? Well, weird actually. I was in a second-hand shop and I bought like a cabinet thing for my house, and I just got Pascal. So I was standing outside waiting for the people to come out and lift it into the back of Pascal, and I was just going, that van's got a lot of character. It's a cool little van. I should probably give it a name. And then from somewhere off in the distance, someone just went, "Oi, Pascal!" So that's how it's called, Pascal. How expensive is camping in France? What kind of amenities do they have? Are there a lot of campgrounds in your area of France? Yeah, there's loads of camping around here, especially during the tourist season. So a lot of the campsites will close, for the winter. Some stay open. And the prices range. There's municipal camping areas in a lot of the bigger places. So there's a town near the chateau called Aubusson, and they have a municipal campsite by the river. It's quite pretty actually. And they have hot showers and electric hookup and all that sort of good stuff. And I think it's about €4 a night. And I think it's about €9 if you want electrical hookup, but you need to bring your own cables and stuff like that. I mean, some of the other campsites in the tourist spots are a bit more expensive. So I went to a pretty posh one a few weeks ago, and that was like 22 euros a night. All of them will have showers and toilets. A lot of them will have like a communal cooking area, where if you don't want to camp out of a tent or cook out of a tent, or you don't want to cook out of your camper van, there's like a little area there with some stoves and things like that. What is the cost of a meal in those French villages, like the one you had where the beautiful dog was? It's not actually that bad. I think you'll get a steak and chips for about €16. I think last night I had a beer, steak and chips, profiteroles and a coffee, and it came to €27. A lot of the smaller towns and villages will have a restaurant that will do what's called a menu du jour, a menu of the day. It's a set menu, it's usually one choice, and it's probably around 15 or 16 euros. And that'll give you a starter, a main course, a dessert, sometimes a cheese plate, and usually they put a jug of wine on the table. Some of them include coffee at the end, and some of them they charge coffee as extra. And then with restaurants, you can go super, super expensive, or you can just go normal food. That's why it's so easy to eat out here. It's like, what will this cost me in time, groceries, energy to produce myself, or will I go and support a local business and get a nice meal that I don't have to cook? Why France? Ireland is so beautiful. Just the weather? Yeah, a big part of it was the weather. I mean, before I left Ireland, it rained solidly for 6 months, and I'm not joking. And if it wasn't raining, it was overcast. The weather here is night and day compared to Ireland. I do love Ireland. How bad a state was your house in when you bought it? I was quite lucky. My house was pretty solid and pretty sound. The roof was good, but the decorating had been completed in 1980, so it was horrendous. So basically I had to redo the whole house and then, make it the way I wanted it. So changing bathrooms, changing kitchens and something like that. But it was livable when I bought it. Do penguins in France have knees? No, they don't. Is France your end game? I presume they mean, am I going to stay here? Yeah, I'm here now. I mean, I've traveled obviously, but no, I live in France and I will live in France. Is your van diesel? Yes. Pascal is a 1.6 litre diesel Renault Express with 4 forward gears and a maximum velocity of 80 kilometers an hour. He had 56 horsepower when new, and many ponies have escaped since then. Are you taking us to Ireland anytime soon? Yeah, actually, we're going to Ireland at the end of September, October. That's all of us, you and me. We're all going. We're going to see my mum and dad and have some tasty, tasty Guinness. I'm currently looking at a chateau that's for sale. I'm doing a lot of homework about it. What would be your pros and cons about buying a chateau in France? Again, it depends on what you want to do with it. If you're buying it to use it as like a guest house or a hotel, it's something that's going to generate revenue for you, and you can afford the upkeep for that place, then go for it. Chateaus, and some of them can come with a lot of issues. So like by definition, most of them are quite old. So things to check when you're buying a chateau, and I'm sure, Stephanie or people will have plenty even better advice than I have. But, I check, make sure the roof is good, look at how warm it is during the winter, what it costs to heat, what the sewer system is like, what the water pressure is like. So simple things like, yeah, okay, I got running water, great. Now you have 8 guest rooms and they're all having a shower at the same time. Is the water pressure enough that they can all have a hot shower at the same time? So it's stuff like that. Think of like buying a house, but with bigger problems and more expense. Did you just jump right into living there in France? No, I've been to France quite a lot. I used to work in the Alps and I've traveled around France quite a lot and I really like it. So that's kind of why I decided I want to live in France. How far do you live from Dan? Not very far. Brian, do you think that dogs are Earth's angels? Absolutely. I have not met a dog I didn't like. Is there any country you have already visited that stands out in your mind as your favorite? Well, I kind of have to say France is my favorite because I live here and it's really, really beautiful. But I have traveled around quite a lot, and I think after France, my next favorite country would probably be Nepal. Kathmandu is a mad place. Everyone should go and visit it once. And then I'd say Borneo is quite cool. And then I'd say New Zealand. Actually, do you know what? I'd put the 3 of those on equal pegging. They're all as cool as each other. Were you fearless as a kid? I would say probably a bit more stupid than fearless. But yeah, I was always up for clambering about on roofs and jumping off things and doing silly stuff. How did you get your carpentry skills? Practice. My niece is going to Nice in the next couple of weeks. I hope to have a nice time. I know that was terrible. Chicken update. Yes, so I haven't got any chickens yet. I am failing spectacularly with the chickens for a couple of reasons. One, I just haven't finished bedding in the chicken hut yet. And the other reason is, I'm not home all the time. So I want to be able to make sure the chickens are okay when I'm not there. So I'm looking at one of those automatic chicken door things. Yeah, so it's an ongoing thing. No chickens yet. What is the favorite tool you will never throw out from your garage? My favorite one is my grandfather's mole grips. that my dad gave me years ago. And that's been everywhere with me, and I'll never throw that away. I also have a piston from an old Bedford TK lorry engine that was also my grandfather's, and that's in my workshop, and I really love that. Do you ever drink wine from Italy while you were in France? Yeah, absolutely not. Well, I hope you enjoyed that bit of a Q&A session. I'm always happy to answer questions. Just send an old comment or something like that, and I'll try and start keeping a list of them, because they do come in quite regularly, and I always feel bad not replying to every comment, but I do read a lot of comments. So yeah, if you have any questions, let me know, and at some point I'll gather a few together and answer them. Right, better get back.